Fabulous show today. We have an author. Her name is Tracy Norris, and she wrote the book Shadows of Grief. And she wrote it based on her journey after losing her son. And it's a very interesting book, and I think everyone should read it. It talks about her journey and what her goals are. And we will be speaking to her right after the intro. Hi, Tracy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so
I'm
much, America.
I'm glad to have you on. Tracy is an author of her new book called Shadows of Grief, and she wrote it. What inspired her to write is she lost her son Marcus, and I will let Tracy tell her story and let us know where she's going on her journey. So, tell us a little bit about the book, Tracy, if you can.
For sure. So, Shadows of Grief was written, as America said, in tribute to my son Marcus. In 2022, we lost Marcus to the fentanyl epidemic. He was poisoned by fentanyl on January 8th, 2022. For our county, there's a reported number of 22 deaths in 2022. And I always think about that in relevance to Marcus is he was so early in the year. And for some reason, my heart and mind just think of those numbers, right? Um, so early. He may have been the first, maybe not. I don't know. They don't give us that kind of information. But the goal of this book, the goal of this journey is just to think about that number one, right? Um, my prayer for this book, my prayer for my journey and for my son's passing is that it's not in vain and that we're at least able to help one other family, one other person, that awareness that we're spreading through this book, through this journey impacts at least one.
Yes, that's so important. I got my book just the other day and I started reading it and I haven't
Mhm.
finished it yet, but it's a very intriguing book and I really do appreciate the insight that you give us for your journey and
Yeah.
it's it's well written. It's very well written, very recommended for people who are going through grief. You hit on so many good topics. And tell us a little bit about Marcus. What was he like
Mm.
as a child?
Marcus was just a super energetic boy. He was adventurous. He was ornery. He was just ornery and stubborn from the time he was teeny tiny. And you know those things about your kids when you're the mom and you're in the fire and maybe you've been with the kids all day or all week and they're just driving you crazy because they get on our nerves sometimes. Man, every single one of those things that used to maybe bother me or I wish things were a little bit different, they're just so beautiful now in retrospect. And so that's a lot about what I'm touching on in the book is embracing a child's strengths as strengths, and recognizing them when we can, bringing ourselves to the forefront of our mind so we're able to say, this great energy can be used for productive and good. Um, where at that time in my journey, at that time in my parenting walk, I didn't have the skills or the knowledge to understand that, hey, take him out on a nature walk, get him exploring, get him hiking, get him climbing, use those pieces of who he is to help him grow in his area of interest or his spark. So just
What
really
I
touches on
found
those
is
things.
what I found is interesting too, with children, even if they have weaknesses, if
Mm,
we can turn those weaknesses and show them how they're, um, they can turn them into
mhm,
strengths and
right.
encourage them that weaknesses are not a default or anything
Mm,
negative. It's just something that they can expound and grow on.
That's right, because we're all just human, right? But again, as that mama, just trying to work through learning to be a parent, learning to parent, and all these pieces of who our kiddos are. So Marcus, he was a busy boy. He loved a good adventure, and he liked to get that shock factor out of everybody, whether it's a funny story or a trick or a joke that he'd played. He was just always up to some kind of mischief.
Did he like school? As in, like, elementary school? How was he in elementary school?
Social. He loved school. He loved to go and, hang out with the other kids. He loved to, he would walk into any room and make a friend. He made a friend everywhere he went. He did
Oh my
not love
goodness.
Yeah, he didn't wanna sit behind the desk, and he didn't wanna listen to all the information that was being given to him, but he learned with his hands, right? And some people just do.
Yes. You know what I think is interesting is the simple fact that there's so much that I mean, we're not given an instruction book. When we have
Mm,
kids, we just have to kind of go with the flow and kind of
mhm.
figure out what it is that we're doing. And it's interesting to know that all of my kids were different.
Right,
There can't be an instruction book, and it's not an all for one and one for all type of
right.
situation. So, uh, did he love going to school, like, in when he got into his middle grade in high school?
N no, no, just again, social, Marcus was fun, he clung to these pieces of life, right? He was pretty committed to just, a minimalistic way of thinking well before he was old enough to understand what that meant. Like, he just never needed much, never asked for much, he just wanted to have a good time, and he clung to that. And so, what he did teach me in that is just to live in the moment. He was so good at that. He was so good at, not stressing out about the things that would absolutely drive me crazy because the amount of order or control, right, that I think I need. No, he's just like this go with the flow. Let's enjoy the time that we're given kind of guy. And really he was lucky that he was that by temperament because he did have a shorter life.
Yes,
And
and kinda tell us about what happened to Marcus. You lost him, as you said. Uh,
mhm,
how did you lose him? Can you kind of explain to the audience and give us a
yeah,
little insight?
sure. Marcus had substance abuse disorder. He struggled with addiction, bouts of recovery. He had been in and out of different rehab programs for many years. Marcus fought for if he fought for anything, it was for his sobriety, and he fought for it especially after finding out that he was going to be a father. And so, yeah. Mhm. So he really worked hard for his sobriety, and he fell back into relapse after relapse, and back then into rehabilitation programs. So he fought hard, he worked on it. But ultimately, what happened is he had a good 8 month stint of sobriety. And then he went back out, and when he used what he had been using, right, for all of this time. And he had built up a tolerance in the past that allowed him to use more of whatever it was he was using. And this time, the the fentanyl was in the drug that he was taking. Marcus had gotten to a part of in his addiction where he was actually seeking fentanyl. He was seeking it. He knew it was in there. Um, and we know that it takes a very, very small amount of fentanyl to take a life, right? And so the ability to build up tolerance, as I said, when we're talking about fentanyl, it's not there. We don't get to just, say, "Oh, I can have this much," because you don't know how much is actually in whichever substance it is that you're ingesting.
Right, and I think that fentanyl is designed to be snuck into your drug of choice just to create a bigger addiction so that
Mhm,
you would keep coming back for your drug of choice. Because
mhm,
heroin and meth and,
mhm,
I've known people that were heroin users for a long time,
Yeah,
and it didn't affect them until,
it
well, it
doesn't.
affected them obviously, but it didn't really kill people until fentanyl was
Mhm.
introduced.
Right,
And,
so
you can die from a heroin overdose, if you do too much of it, but when it comes to fentanyl, there's no
mhm,
safe dosage,
there's no safe dosage.
and it's like playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets. You may build up a tolerance, what they seem to think is a tolerance, but you might hit
Mhm,
that big chunk that just takes your life, and that's what
and
it
you
sounds
don't
like
know.
happened to Marcus. I'm so
That's right.
sorry to hear about, what happened, and, so he did have a child, and
Mhm. He did,
that
yeah.
okay, wonderful. Okay, so, now when you were going through this, and you're a strong mama because you no doubt made sure that he was, you were keeping in touch and making sure that he was getting involved with sobriety. And
We
I
fought
know that
hard.
how, yes. And can you tell me, like, give us an idea what kind of treatments you were seeking?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Marcus, he was in inpatient treatment. He was in outpatient treatment. He was in just, in AA. He went to all the A meetings, and that was great and helpful. He did some adventure therapy at one point. He did a boarding school when he was younger. He did some faith-based programs. He did a program that was actually run out of a homeless shelter. So Marcus has been to so many programs. On 3 different occasions, he was in, programs that were run out of churches, and those ones seemed to be the most effective for him, but the last one that he, went to was, the Friendship House in San Francisco, and that's run through the Cherokee Nation. They did a great job working with him. He stuck with it for a really long time, and he graduated. He came home with his little diploma, and he made it all the way through the program. He graduated, and he was reintegrating back into society, but he only lived just a few weeks outside of the Friendship House.
Now, one of the things that I think that's hardest for people with addiction issues is the simple fact that when you go through a program, you are surrounded by people that are
Mhm.
helping you. And then when you graduate, it's all great. When you go back out, the whole key to it is to change that circle, change the
Right.
circle of people that you're around. And
Mhm.
that's kind of hard to do. Even
Mm.
if you move to another area, if you have an addiction issue, tend to, people tend to seem to find other addicts. That just is something that I've heard over
Yeah.
and over again, that it didn't matter where we lived, their
Mhm.
child was able to find people that had addiction issues. So tell us a little bit about your book, Shadows of
Mm.
Grief.
Yeah.
It yeah, what inspired you, and kind of tell us about your journey in writing this book.
Such a pleasure to write this book. This story, it just started really moving in me as I was connecting with other moms walking. Maybe some of them had a child who had passed away much longer ago, and some of them after Marcus, and some of them real close in time. And regardless of the distance between the current day and the passing of their child, the burden was still present. There's a common thread that mamas, that dads, that family members that are just intimately close to someone who passes away, and with fentanyl poisoning, a lot of times it's so unexpected, right? A grandparent dies, they've had a very full life, and that's hard and it's sad. But these deaths that are so preventable and so untimely, and when lives are just cut short the way that we're seeing it, it's a different kind of connectedness within this section of the grief community than anything I had ever experienced in my life. And so the process just of connecting with other people, the process of having them pour into my life, I've had them pray over me, pray with me, pray for me, walk with me. And these relationships had given me just so much strength that I was committed to finding a way to give back. And what I found is that as I'm writing, as I'm responding to messages, as I'm doing late night phone calls, that I'm also really starting to feel like I can face the world. The number one thing, I'm not alone. Like this feels isolating. This feels alone. This feels really bad. Feels really, really bad. And then when somebody sits with you in the dark and they're like, I know, it feels really bad from right here too, but we're in this together and we can do this. And finally, it feels like maybe I'm not gasping so hard for air. Maybe the air is just starting to flow. And as we pour into each other, as we give each other just the little bits of strength that we have to give, I'm seeing people get up and do great things. I'm seeing people finding purpose in their pain, using their pain to go out and do outreach, to connect with other people, to spread awareness of the fentanyl epidemic, to help people fight for their investigations. A lot of great things are coming from this place of deep pain, of deep grief. And Shadows of Grief, the book, is written in response to the relationships that I developed in the Shadows of Grief Facebook community, which my daughter actually created for me, the group, just after Marcus had passed away. So, what a gift for me that was, that she was like, Mom, I'm going to create this group and you can just start to connect with people. And she created it and left. She hasn't participated in it at all. But from that gift of this group, I have found a great source of just strength and energy and a desire to give back.
Wow. And I do know that with the, um, when this happens, because I lost my son in 2021 in November of
Mhm,
2021, I felt alone too. And
mhm,
when I realized that there was groups out there that were
mhm.
going through exactly what I was going through,
Right.
different circumstances slightly, but the result was the same. We lost a child.
Mhm,
And,
mhm,
somebody put it so eloquently that, when you lose a spouse, you're a widow or a
mhm,
widower. When you lose a parent, you're an orphan.
mhm.
But when you lose a child, there is no word for it.
Right.
And there's because it's not supposed to happen. And, I was just explaining to somebody that my hand is very beautiful, but if one finger was cut off, it's the same hand, but it looks different. It's
Mhm.
injured and it takes a lot of getting used to.
Mhm.
And it's described so well. The hurt and the pain is so
Right.
strong. And you
Mhm.
just have to find out what the new normal is for your purpose.
Mm.
And I had to find my new normal. I would have never thought that I would be involved in talking about my child from a billboard, or him
Mhm.
bringing awareness from a billboard,
Right.
um, having a podcast. When I think about retirement and my field in information technology, I would have never thought 5 years ago that I would be doing today what I'm doing now. We're definitely finding different strengths, and yours was in a book.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that you didn't think 8 years ago that you would be a book writer.
No. No, no. But here we are, right? Here we are. And I think the hard thing in that is finding the strength to be as raw and vulnerable as you have to be in order to put the words right out on the podcast, to write the words out on a piece of paper, to say the things that matter enough to make a difference. It takes a different kind of vulnerability than I ever thought I was capable of. So I've definitely found some strength that I didn't know I had, and I'm grateful for that strength. I thank God for every breath, for every time I'm able to stand up and walk out the door, and most definitely for the ability to stand up, have the tough conversations, and share my heart in a way that I didn't think I could before.
So, when you had your first speaking engagement, was that
Mhm,
one of the most difficult things you could do? I know with me, it was
mhm,
like I just stood
mhm,
there and I didn't know what to
mhm,
say because I felt like I was going to melt in
mhm,
my shoes and shatter in a million pieces. I don't know. I had kind of all those feelings all at once.
mhm.
What was it like for you the first
Oh,
time you
yeah.
had to talk in front of a crowd?
All of that, I speak pretty regularly for work in front of pretty large groups, but when you have to talk about your heart and soul, it's finding the words, finding the strength, finding the courage is a whole different ball game entirely. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. I felt like walking up there, I was going to be fine. This is pretty normal for me. And then as soon as I was faced with, okay, this is what you're going to say, Tracy, I froze.
Exactly what I did.
Mhm,
And so, your book, Shadows of Grief, where can
mhm.
people buy your book?
So it is available on Amazon and it is also available on my website. So that's shadowsofgrief.com.
Okay, I'll post those in the description below. And another thing that I was going to ask you is, are you planning any events in the future
Mhm.
in regards to your book?
So the 29th, this coming Friday, there is a book launch event. It's going to be on Center Street in Yuba City, California, and it's at the Steelhouse Coffee Shop. So the event is on a pretty fun little walking street, and then there's great parking at the far end. But again, that's Steelhouse Coffee, Yuba City, California, from 6 to 8 p.m. And it's really not so much, it was designed to be the book launch event. However, there's a big focus of community. And so what we're doing is having Narcan distribution, community resources to include NA sponsorship and mental health information. We'll have several speakers and then a musician will be there as well. So we're doing the best that we can to make sure this is an awareness event, that the book will be there. We're all going to be there. We're going to have a lot of moms sharing their heart. America's, you're going to join us, share a little bit about your story with Merrick, and
Yes,
then
I
a
will.
couple other local mamas are going to be there as well. So super excited just to have multiple perspectives, multiple voices, because again, Shadows of Grief is a community. It's a story that I wrote based on my experience with Marcus, but it's written for and inspired by the Shadows of Grief Facebook community.
Well, I thank you for being with me and sharing your story, the inspiration of your book, Shadows of
Yeah,
Grief. I'm looking forward to reading the rest. And let me tell you, people, you need to get this book. It's very, very good. It touches on every aspect and helps you to understand grief and how to manage that grief. I really do thank you, Tracy, and we will see you at the book launching, and I will be there as well. If those of you that want to come out and meet Tracy Norris, be there on the 29th
that's right.
at the Steelhouse Coffee Shop in Yuba City, California.